Okay, today we're going to be kind of doing the same idea, simplifying it. That's what you're pretty much doing this whole week, and then we get on to easier stuff. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's that hard. It's just kind of monotonous and boring. Need your good old scratch paper again. Okay, just flip it over. Now what you're going to do is you're going to run across some negative powers. Okay, here's how you handle negative powers. You have been making 2 boxes. Now at this point, you need to start going with 3 on all problems. So we have, and you need to make sure you see a line on all problems. Even ones that don't have any, you're going to make your own line. So underline, underline, underline. Well, there are no number bases in this problem. It says x to the 4th divided by x to the negative 6th power. The only base I have is x. Now I have 2 of them. I have a 4 and a negative 6. So 4 comma negative 6. Okay? So now let's see what we're going to do with those. So 4, circle, negative 6. Well, this comes from the top, and the negative 6 comes from bottom, so we know we're minusing. But when I minus a negative number, you need to make that plus plus. So 4 plus positive 6 is just 10. Easy enough. Now, I want you to look at your exponents, little powers. Is that positive or negative? It's a 10th power. It's positive, so what you can do is just cross that box out. That box is for if I have negative powers. And then I don't really have any number bases. I mean, all I have is the x to the 10th, and I can't really figure that out, so the answer is x to the 10th. Okay. Next, same thing. You need to, on all problems now, you need to start making 3 boxes. Now, if you don't have the underline, make it yourself. So my bases are 10 times x times y. Okay, 10. So 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then x, I've got 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then for y, I've got 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Now, do you have negative powers? Yeah, I have 10 to the negative 2nd power, 10 to the negative 2, y to the negative 2. Here's what you need to do with negative powers. You need to move the base to the other side of the line. So it's on top here, it's going to the bottom, okay? So 10, and here's what happens when you do that. The negative 2 now turns into a positive 2. Now the x, bottom, negative 2 turns to a positive 2. And the y, bottom, the negative 2 turns into a 2. Now, you can't have an empty top. You can have an empty bottom on all the problems, but you can't have an empty top. If your top of your fraction ends up empty, you put a 1 there. Okay? So that's 1. 10 to the 2nd is 100. And then x to the 2nd I cannot figure out, and y to the 2nd. So that's my answer. Okay, my next problem, underline, three underlines. Okay, number bases, I don't have any. For letter bases, I have an A and a B. On top, there's nothing on bottom right now. So for A, I have a 4 and a negative 10. No parentheses, so just write the powers. So now I got to decide what I'm going to do with 4 and negative 10. That's on top, and the other one's on top too. So when they're on top, I just plus them. So 4 plus negative 10 is negative 6. So a is to the power of negative 6. Now let's look at our b. There's 2 of those as well. I have a negative 3, not parenthesized, and a 6, not parenthesized. So negative 3 and 6. Okay, so they both come from the top. They're both on top of the line. So top, top. So I'm going to plus those, and that's 3. So that is to the third. Now, does your a have a negative power? Yes, it does. So the a needs to move to the other side of the line, and its power now is just 6. Does this b have a negative power? No, the power ended up positive, so we need to keep the b where it's at, because its power needs to stay positive. And then for the last box, I cannot figure out b to the third. I also can't figure out a to the sixth. b to the third over a to the sixth is our answer. Okay, our next one, 3 boxes. Here's your line. My number bases, I've got a 2. That's it. And then letter bases, I have x on top. That's the only x, and y on bottom. So 2 to the first. All right, not in a parentheses, so I guess it's just to the first. X, negative 3, not in parentheses, it's just negative 3. And then y, that's a negative 4. Okay, now, 2 to the first. Is the power positive or negative? It's positive, so we just leave that like it is. How about that power? Is that positive or negative? It's negative, so the x goes to the other side, and the negative 3 turns into 3. Now let's talk about the y. Does the y have a negative power? Sure it does. So I need to move the y upstairs. Okay, so y goes upstairs, and the negative 4 goes to a 4. So 2 to the first is 2 times y to the fourth. I can't figure out x to the third either, so there's my answer. Okay, let's keep her rolling here. And I have a lot of examples here. Underline. Bases, I have a 7, an x, and a y. So 7 is to the first in a parentheses, so 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. X, I have negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 2 is actually going to be positive 6, because it's negative times a negative. Then for y, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So we're set up. Does 7 have a negative exponent? Yes, so 7 moves downstairs, and the 2 becomes positive. Does x have a negative exponent? Nope. It's positive, so I keep that where it's at. Y's power, it's negative, so it moves downstairs, and it becomes positive. Okay, so x to the 6th, can't do anything about that. 7 to the 2nd, I can do something about. That's 49 times y to the 2nd. Simplified. Okay, next up, underline the whole thing. I need to see an underline somewhere. If you don't have it, I guess you better make it. Okay, so I have 7 and 8 as my number bases, the big number bases. And then for letters, I have x and y. The rest of it's just powers. So 7 to the first, so 1 times 2 is 2. 8 to the first, but that's not in a parentheses, so if it's not in a parentheses, you just put 1 down, don't multiply. Okay, for x's, I see 2 of those, so negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, comma, and then a 2 right there. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with negative 4 and 2. Well, both those x's come from the top, so top to top we add, and that's negative 2. So that x is to the power of negative 2. Okay, now for the y's, there's an here. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Okay, did 7 have a negative power? No. Keep it where it's at. Does that have a negative power? No. Keep it where it's at. Did that have a negative power? Yep, downstairs with him. Now it's 2. Did that have a negative power? Yep, downstairs. That's 6. Okay, so 7 to the second, I can figure that out. That's 49. 8 to the first is 8. Now bottom, x to the second times y to the sixth. And now I can times those numbers. So 49 times 8. That's 392. All right, next one. Take the line, extend it across. Then boom, boom, boom. Number bases, I have a 2 on top. That's the only number base I have. Now for letter bases, I have an M on top, an N on top, another M, which I've already have, another M, already have M, already have N, already have N, okay? So 1 times 3 is 3. Now there's 3 different M's in the problem. So I got a 1, 1 times 3 is 3, comma, negative 8, and negative 3. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with those. So I have a 3, circle, negative 8, circle, and 3. So the first M comes from the top, the second M comes from the top, and our third M comes from the bottom. So remember our rule, we plus those, and then when I move to the bottom, I minus. Okay, so 3 plus negative 8 minus 3, you can do it just like that, negative 8. So my M is to the power of negative 8. Okay, and then the N, there's 3 of those too. So I got 1 times 3 is 3. And then a 6, and then another 6. So what am I going to do with those 3? I got to clean that mess up. Well, the first N comes from the top. But then I go to the bottom. The other 2 come from the bottom. Here's what you want to do. Forget that. From top to bottom, you know you minus, right? Once you start minusing, the rest of the circles are minus, okay? Once you start minusing, you don't stop. So that'll also be minus. So I take 3 minus 6 minus 6, and that's negative 9. So N is to the negative 9th power. So that has a positive. Keep him where it's at. That is a negative. Move him down. Positive 8. That is a negative. Move him down. So that's 9. Okay, so 2 to the third. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And then M to the 8th times N to the 9th. Okay, next. Okay, 5. There's another number base of 5, but I already have 5 down, so I don't need it again. So times x times y. So 5, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, but remember we have a second one. 1 times 2 is 2. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with negative 2 and positive 2. Well, it looks to me like they both came from the top side of the fraction, so they're both on top, we add. Well, funny thing happens here, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So if you get 0, you just get rid of that. Get that out of the problem. You will not see that again. X, 2 of those. Negative 4 times negative 2 is 8, comma, and then 1 times 2 is 2. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with 8 and 2. So they're both on top. So we plus them, and that's 10. So the x is going to go to the 10th power. Okay, now the y. -6 and +2. Okay. They both, again, both y's look like they're on top of the line, so top, we plus them, and that's -4. So the y is to the -4th. Now the x has a positive power, so you keep him where he's at. The y has a negative, so he moves downstairs. Okay, there's nothing really else I can do because I can't figure out x to the 10th, and I can't figure out y to the 4th. Okay, then this gets a lot quicker here, well, somewhat, okay. I have m, and that appears like that's my only base. So again, -8, comma, -6. That's top to bottom. So if it's top to bottom, we minus. But remember, when I subtract the negative number, we really just add the positive number. That's -2. So m is to the -2. Now, that's the only thing I have, but it has a negative power. So that's got to move downstairs, so that the power is positive. And then I have an empty top, so I need to put a 1. So the answer is 1 over m to the 2nd. Okay, next one. Underline. My bases, I have a 5, an x, and a y. So 5, 1 times -4 is -4. 1 times -4 is -4. And 1 times -4 is -4. Now 5 has a negative power, so he moves downstairs, so the power is positive. X moves downstairs so that his power is positive, and y moves downstairs so his power is positive. Now you can't have an empty top, so you're going to need to put a 1. The bottom can be empty, the top can't. You can't have a denominator with no numerator. Okay, you can have a numerator with no denominator. I have it all the time when I have a whole number. Like 8 is the same thing as 8 over 1. Okay, so 1, 5 to the 4th I can figure out. 5 to the 4th is 625 times x to the 4th times y to the 4th. Okay. Next up. Okay, you have no number basis, you just have x and y. Okay, so x, we got a 5 and a -9. Now I got to figure out what that becomes of that. They're both on top, so top, we're going to plus those, -4. Okay, how about the y? I've got a -6 and 8. They both come from the top. We need to be plussing those, and that's 2. Okay, now x has a negative power. He's got to move downstairs, so that becomes 4. That does not have a negative power. He stays up where he's at. And I can't figure out y to the 2nd. I can't figure out x to the 4th, so that is your answer. Okay, next up. 5 times m on top, there's an n on bottom, so 5 to the 1st, so we got 1. M is going to be -4, and that is a -6. Okay. So that's a positive power, so we don't move him. He moves, so that -4 becomes 4, and then he moves, so -6 becomes 6. So 5 to the 1st is 5 times n to the 6th, and m to the 4th. Okay, moving along. Underline him. Bases, I got 4 times a times b. So 4 to the 1st. 1 times -2 is -2. -2 times -2 is 4. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So that ended up with a negative power. Move him to the bottom, and it becomes 2. Keep a to the 4th on top because it's positive power. Don't move it. Negative power moved. Move him downstairs. And I can figure out 4 to the 2nd. So a to the 4th, and then 16 times b to the 2nd. Okay, next one. Underline. And again, 3 boxes. I've got 5 and 7 as my numerical bases. And I've got x and y as my numbers. I don't really have a bottom at this point. So 5 to the 1st, so 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 7 to the 1st, but that's not in a parentheses. I know you get in the habit of doing that, but it's still to the 1st. X, there's 2 different ones. Negative 3 times negative 2 is 6, and then 3. So 6, and they're both on top. So 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, now y, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Okay, that has a negative power, so that moves to the bottom, so it becomes positive. That stays where it's at. That stays where it's at. And that has a negative power, so move him downstairs instead of the 4th. Okay, so 7 to the 1st is 7. 5 to the 2nd, it's going to be 25 times y to the 4th. Okay, and again, these 2 big numbers, when they're on opposite sides of the line, do not do anything with them. Okay, if they're on the same side, you times them, but they're not. Okay, extend your line. Just about done here. Okay. 7 is your only number base in the whole problem. The rest of those numbers you see are powers. So times x times y. And just more x's and more y's. So 7, I take 1 times 2, that's 2. X's, there's 3 different ones. I have 1, so 1 times 2 is 2. So I got a 2, comma. That's a 2 I wrote down. Negative 8, comma, and negative 3. Okay, so I got to figure that out. So 2 circle negative 8, circle negative 3. Okay, the first x comes from the top. The second x comes from the top. The third x comes from the bottom. Okay, so what do? We plus the tops minus the bottom. Okay, so when I'm plussing my tops, of course, I take 2 plus negative 8. Oh, yeah, by the way, this minus negative, I would make that plus plus. So 2 plus negative 8, negative 6. And then if I add positive 3 to negative 6, I still have a negative, but it gets it down to negative 3. So my x is to the power of negative 3. Okay, now my y, there's 3 of those too. So 1 times 2 is 2, comma, negative 6, and then 3. Okay. So top, bottom, bottom. So top, bottom, bottom. So from top to bottom we minus, and once we start minusing, we don't stop. Okay. So 2 minus negative 6, when I say minus negative, plus plus, and then minus 3. So 2 plus 6 is 8, minus 3 is 5. So y is to the positive 5th power. Okay, 7's to a positive power, keep it the way it is. The x is to a negative power, you need to move the x downstairs so it becomes 3. And then y is to a positive power. Okay. So 7 to the 2nd, it's 49 times y to the 5th, and then x to the 3rd. Okay, my last problem. Okay, so my number bases are 2 and 5. So 2 times 5. Those are the only ones you have. Your letter bases are X and Y. Okay, so 2. 1 times 2 is 2. On 5, 1 times 2 is 2. There's two different X's, so I take negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, comma, and 3 times 2 is 6. So negative 4, circle 6. Those are both on top, so we plus those, and that's 2. So X is to the positive 2 power, and then the Y, 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay? So 6 and 2, they're both on top, top to top. Just add them. It's 8. Okay, so that has a positive power. That has a positive power. That has a positive power. And that has a positive power, so they all have positive power, so I don't need to move them. So 2 to the second is 4 times 5 to the second. I can figure that out. It's 25. X to the second, I can't figure out. Y to the 8th, I can't figure out. So 4 times 25, we know, is 100. All right.